Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's time for Out There with the Birds with your host Bill Thompson III and Ben Lizdas. With more than 1 million years of combined bird watching experience on planet Earth and elsewhere, Bill and Ben are here to share their unique perspectives on birding, birders, and a whole lot more. Out There with the Birds is supported by Koa Sporting Optics, makers of the legendary 883 Promenar spotting scope. Visit sportingoptics.koa-usa.com to learn more. Additional support comes from the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Come birding with us in our favorite places. Learn more at birdwatchersdigest.com/rr. And now here they are, Bill and Ben.
All right, Ben, it's time for another episode of Out There with the Birds. Are you ready to go out there?
I'm ready to go out there, Bill.
All right, let's go.
All right, excellent. So,
when I say kick off with a tasty jam, you kick it off with a tasty jam, okay?
I'll kick it off with a tasty jam. It's high summer, and I have been kind of scouring the news media trying to see what themes I'm seeing in birding and wildlife out there. And really, I've been seeing news items popping into my head here that remind that maybe animals might actually have the upper hand on us human beings, even though we often don't think that's the case.
Right. We like to think of ourselves as the top of the food chain and every other chain.
Correct. And we kind of are, but kind of what I've been reading lately has been really causing me to second guess and seeing the evolutionary trajectory of animals as maybe they're working on getting the upper hands. We might, we don't let your guard down, Bill. Whenever you're out birding, don't let your guard down. So first up, I have what I'm referring to as Planet of the Ravens. You're familiar with the story of Planet of the Apes, right? Kind of the same.
I lived the story of Planet of the Apes. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it turns out that researchers in Sweden just recently published an article in the Journal of Science about how ravens demonstrate cognitive capabilities that are in line with higher level species, such as human beings, great apes. In fact, one of the researchers concluded or stated from the survey or the study, it is conservative to conclude that ravens perform similarly to great apes and young children.
Wow.
And when we're talking about performing here, the study literally was specifically about the ability of ravens to plan ahead. And this goes beyond the scope of caching food for future use, which could be seen as just one of those evolutionarily biological things that you're just born with, innate. This has to do with a study where researchers would have this kind of this tube that had this attached to this box that had food in it, and they would present a raven with a host of tools and objects and shiny objects, and ravens would quickly learn that one particular object, in this case a certain shaped rock, would go in this tube, and when that would go in there, they would be presented with food. And essentially they got to a point where they would present the object but not the box with the food in it, and the object amongst a whole host of other attractive shiny objects. The raven would pick the right one, essentially the key to the lock, even when and they would know to use that even when presented with the box with the food in it up to 17 hours later. They were with an 88% accuracy rate.
Yeah, I could not do that. I would not be able to connect those dots at all.
It's pretty amazing. They found that when there was a delay of 15 minutes between selecting an object and being presented with the reward box, 86% of the time the ravens got it right. But when they extended the period to 17 hours, 88% of the time they got it right.
Wow.
So, and they also found that birds would tend to opt out of immediate food rewards when there was a promise of larger, tastier treats later.
Okay.
Which, it's kind of, I fail that test often.
I do too.
If you could have one beer now or three beers 2 hours from now, what do? You go for the beer now.
Exactly. Beer now, always.
But it's interesting to think of, the species of birds having this higher degree of cognitive awareness. And certainly when you think of animals around us, like apes, for instance, you can relate to that. You could say, oh yeah, they're there on the ancestral family tree of ours, but researchers who were involved in this study didn't really feel as though there's any common ancestor that this evolved from. This, in fact, one of the theories is that ravens develop this sense of cognitive awareness of being able to plan ahead as a result of their higher social order that they
Yeah.
have, being social, which of course is very much like humans as well. But
Some humans, for sure. Not all.
so not all not all humans by any means. So, when you're out in the woods though and you're bird watching, next time a raven flies over, I'm just going to be thinking to myself, that guy's got designs on me in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Like, who's watching who here?
He's going to drop a rock on my head and steal my wallet and go through the drive-through and get a tasty treat. Or you're thinking, how does that raven fly with that giant brain in his skull?
Well, it's interesting. They were talking about neuron density in corvids as being one of the things that might, enable the type of behavior, and looking at parrots as having a similar neuron density, which of course, as parrots are one of those species of birds that just remembers things. And,
well, it's a very smart family. It's a very social family too. So that would make sense to me that they've got they're able to mimic people. They're able to imitate. They if you look at YouTube videos, they seem to have a really good sense of rhythm. Some of them can break dance. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and I think there was a videos once where we saw ravens entertaining themselves. I think I saw this on a YouTube video, kind of creating a sliding down a metal roof just for the fun of it.
Right.
Apparently just having fun. So it really does make you think twice about the kind of the social structure of birds and that sense of other creatures as sentient beings. And I know that's something that you've looked at before, you've read about before. It certainly isn't the first time.
No, and it's something that Julie Zickafoos talks about a lot. In fact, she's written about it a lot in the magazine. Birds as having, we don't give credit to any of the other members of the animal kingdom as having feelings or emotions or souls, for example. We think humans are the only ones with that. But I think, we've had this blue jay Jemima around our house for about the last month, and I'll tell you, that thing has a sense of play. It's super smart. It's very social. It seems to almost be kind of, when it sees Chet Baker or Liam, it kind of goes into this baby play mode. Now the apron strings are getting cut slowly. It's becoming more and more wild and less dependent on our handouts, but it's pretty amazing when you get to bond with an individual bird like that, and you see that they really do have personalities. And then how will we ever know what else they have? I mean, Julie's a firm believer that her dad, who's been dead for many, many years, sends her messages in the form of hawks, especially red-tailed hawks, one of his favorite birds. So, there are all these connections that go way beyond what we can figure out. We're still figuring out how to put the rocks down the tube to get the cheeseburger. So,
Well, and news and information like this, studies like this are fascinating. It really makes us, it seems at first thought, it's kind of new information for us, but you wonder, in this day and age, it does seem really kind of groundbreaking, or things that we don't think about, but you wonder how much of this type of behavior with birds was better understood by people when people just spent a lot more time outdoors and in nature in the past.
And speaking of being out in nature, didn't you tell me you had some stories about how things in nature can are out to get you?
Oh, for sure. Well, another story another story that I was reading, I came across, this is published in Newsweek. They were talking about a recent paper published in the Wilson Journal of Ornithology about what I would consider the zombie apocalypse happening in the garden.
Okay.
Praying mantises, preying on birds, latching onto their skulls, and sucking out their brains while the birds are still alive. Normally, we think of birds eating insects.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is a case of insects eating birds.
Flipping
and once
the
again,
script.
gets back to my theme of when, is nature going to turn this 180 degrees on us one of these days.
It's just a matter of time.
But in this study, they show that mantises have been observed targeting birds around the world in every single continent except Antarctica.
Yeah, those
And
mantises down there are slowed up by the cold. They're not so
they
fast.
and the penguins are probably a little bit bigger. In fact, when you think of the most common bird types of bird, that would be prey for a praying mantis. What do you think it is? What group of
I
birds?
would say hummingbirds, probably kinglets,
Yeah,
the tiny little things.
hummingbirds.
Yeah.
Hands down, hummingbirds. Hummingbirds, in fact, mantises have been observed hanging out around hummingbird feeders,
Hmm.
just waiting for the birds to come in. Taking one out of the playbook for the feral cats there, I suppose.
Yep.
Um, but there was one species of mantis in particular, the Chinese mantis, which is spread out throughout North America,
Right.
Northeast North America. They're pretty common as an invasive. That's the guy. That's like the great white shark of praying mantises. But observed eating frogs, lizards, salamanders, shrews, mice, tiny soft-shelled turtles, and even once a bat.
Wow. Chihuahua didn't make
So
the list, huh?
Chihuahua did not make the
It's
list,
too
but
bad.
this is just what's been observed. Um, but in terms of other species, these same researchers who published this paper also observed praying mantises on this is on Long Island attacking and latching on to the head of a blue-headed vireo and a northern parula.
Oh my gosh.
Now, in both those instances, the researchers intervened to save the birds.
Oh,
So,
as any true
kind of,
scientist would.
yeah, exactly. So you never know how far it's going to go with the praying
Oh
mantises.
my gosh.
But I mean, once again, these things that as I've gone out and birding, it's interesting some of the interesting and wacky things that you see in nature.
Right.
At any given time you're out birding, whether or not it's a praying mantis attacking attacking hummingbird. I've never seen anything like that before. I've seen roadrunners attacking birds. We talked about that once. Um, I remember once going out birding at these sewage treatment plants and saw this mallard in the distance, just kind of flapping its wings in the water, almost doing so. I thought it was two mallards going at it,
Right.
and just kind of watching it for a little while, my spotting scope going on and birding around the area, then coming back and the bird is still at it. Got the spotting scope back on it, and I saw this huge dome of what I can only think of it, and I saw it at a pretty good distance of a giant snapping turtle
Oh my gosh.
right at the base of that thing, trying to drag this duck under the water. I'm trying to imagine, could a snapping turtle eat a full-sized adult duck?
I don't think so, but maybe. They've got that horny bill on the front of their mouth that can rip flesh. So
Just one piece at a time, I
yeah, I
suppose.
guess so.
Bit,
Wow.
bit by bit.
Yeah, one time I was
So
swimming at a friend's pond, and a bunch of us were holding onto this big circular raft, and everybody's legs are dangling down into the depths of this murky pond, and I felt something very sharp go across the nail of my big toe, like biting it, and I yelped and jumped up, and I think it was a snapping turtle that took a little nibble at my big toe, and you could see
really,
it created like the point of the bill created a little divot down the middle of my toenail, right? And I
oh
yanked it
my
away so
gosh.
fast it didn't, it hurt, but it wasn't like it didn't feel like I was going to lose my toe. Maybe it's just testing it out. Anyway, I'm just floating there in the raft, holding onto the raft with my legs up practically around my ears, and then I'm thinking, oh no, no, what's the lowest part of my anatomy now? This is not good. So you ever seen the cartoon where the guy walks across the water, like it runs across the water to get out? That was me trying to get away from the snapping turtle and what it might snap next.
Yeah. Well, I remember once camping out in the Yukon Territory. I was on a road trip going up to Alaska, going and doing some birding, some hiking, some backpacking. We were at this national park in Canada, this campground, no one there but us. It was a time of year there wasn't much going on. Campground's empty. Set up the tent, get in the tent, wake up in the middle of the night to what sounds like a bunch of people milling about outside around the tent, branches snapping. But I knew it wasn't people because it was just the pungent smell of elks in heat.
Oh yeah,
And I
sure.
poked my
I
head
know that smell.
outside poked my head outside of the tent to find us completely surrounded by elk. And I don't know how close you've been to one. I don't advise getting
No,
close to
God,
wild animals in
no,
general,
giant wild animals
especially
like that in heat. That's a no-no.
exactly, especially ones weighing that much and being that large that smell that bad.
What'd you do?
I just froze. I kind of put my head back in the tent, was trying to be perfectly still, and just prayed that those elk knew the tent was there,
Right.
so they didn't just trample over us and would just kindly move along. I don't think I slept a wink that
And
night.
sure enough, that's what happened.
And woke up in the morning, not a trace of them was there, except the trampled ground around us. But uh, maybe just a little bit of the smell
Right.
still in the air, though.
Well, that also could have been the smell of fear, Ben. Did you think about that?
That's true. Well, definitely there was the smell of
Right.
fear. I definitely held it that night and did not go outside to take a wee in the woods.
I remember years ago going to Yellowstone National Park,
Mm-hmm.
and we were there a couple weekdays and had a great time seeing all this megafauna. The Lamar Valley is intense and cool, and saw wolves and grizzlies and elk and moose, and it was just outstanding. And at one point on our last day, it was like a Saturday, and the place was just filling up with busloads of tourists. Here's a couple, obviously from somewhere in Asia, and they weren't speaking English, and the mom was holding the camera, and she was motioning her kids to go closer and closer to this bull elk that was resting in the grass.
Oh my
And
gosh.
people are standing around going, no, 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 no. But she didn't understand. She's motioning the kids, smiling. She's with her cameras, get closer, get closer. And I thought, we have to get out of here. I do not want my kids to see this kid who's about their age get just trampled. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, a ranger came along and blew his, blew his horn, and it got everyone's attention. And he made everyone get back. You're not supposed to get out of your vehicle when there's stuff like that.
No,
Down the road,
not at all.
we're just recovering from that. And down the road we go, and here's a grizzly with two cubs, a sow grizzly, and so a bunch of German guys get out of their rental van and go walking up toward it with their tiny little, handheld German cameras. And I'm thinking, now we're gonna get to see how they make the bratwurst. Again, we got out of there quickly because I didn't want to be a party to it and have to, stand around filling out the forms later.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But it is cool. It is cool to know that there's still some things out there that can just kill you.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just one of those things too, when you're always out there, just stay vigilant, not just for your own safety, but just because there's so much cool
That's
stuff
true.
happening out there right now. It's late July, getting on August, high seas. This is the best time of year for seeing foxes.
Mm-hmm.
I read recently, and the latest I get that Birdwire newsletter, and they were talking about fox sightings are way up right now as the fox are essentially spending more time out of their dens, longer days later on in the
Hunting
day.
for hungry
Um,
kits, I'm assuming. Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking is going on. And then I also in that same newsletter, I also read about a recent bobcat attack in Arizona. So
Yeah.
I've never even seen a bobcat before.
I've seen many bobcats, including Bobcat Goldthwait, which I've seen walking down the
Have you
street.
really?
Oh yeah.
Can you do an impression?
No, I can't. I can't.
You're not even gonna try, are you?
I couldn't conjure it right at this minute, but he looked like he'd had a hard night. That's all I'm going to say. But no, bobcats are on the rebound hugely here. We see them around our part of southeast Ohio on a regular basis, like probably at least once every couple of months. I'll see one dashing across the road, or they come into the yard after rabbits and squirrels. So it's I don't think they would ever attack a human, but at least not the ones around here, but maybe
Apparently,
some of the larger ones.
some guy in Arizona got in the wrong end of a bobcat.
Yeah, well, stuff in Arizona it'll all kill you out there.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a music recommendation to make if you're ready for that.
I'm ready for a music recommendation.
Now that we've given everybody all the murder and mayhem, we can give them something.
It's a dangerous, dangerous place out there.
It is, and you can't. You got to keep your head on swivel all the time, bro. You got to check your 12, check your 6, check your 3, check your 9.
Yep.
At all times. Like a bobblehead. That's what you got to be, like a bobblehead.
Exactly.
So I was driving home from an appointment, and I heard the local NPR station guy named Brian Gibson has a radio show called Crossing Boundaries, and he plays, it's all kind of new music, but it's all over the place. He might play jazz, a little folk, some Celtic, some sort of newer stuff, some kind of grungy stuff every now and then. A lot of kind of Americana and kind of roots music, though. And he played this song, and the lyrics to the song, the chorus was, "You can't put a hobo on a passenger train." And I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And the music was super funky, kind of old time, not old time, but like rootsy, kind of with a little bit of a New Orleans feel. Slide guitar, acoustic guitar, stand-up bass, some drums, and great vocals. And it was by a guy named Jake La Botz, LABOTZ. And turns out this guy's a musician. I think he's out of Chicago. But man, it's one of those times when I listened to it and I thought, boy, that was a cool song. So I Shazammed it, and then the Shazam came up with the song, and then I'm going to the guy's website and looking, and I'm thinking, wow, man. So I bought the album. Then I was leafing through, and it said, "You might also be interested in," which is a clever marketing ploy.
Yeah.
And there was this other song, and I played it, and man, I loved it. It was called Tiny. That's the name of the song. And it's about a guy, sort of an imaginary thing, and he runs into this little tiny imaginary guy, and he sings about this new friend he made named Tiny. It's just a really great hooky song, brainworm material, totally. So yeah. Jake La Botz, check it out. He's a
Jake La Botz. J or Jake?
Jake.
And how do you spell La Botz?
LABOTZ.
Bots.
Yep.
All right, it.
So anyway,
not Labot like the beer.
No, not lobotomy either, I don't think. Although it may have been shortened at Ellis Island when his family came in. You never know. But that's my music recommendation for this episode of Out There with the Birds. And man, we're past the 20-minute mark, and we all know that at that point people start dropping like flies right into their nocturnal comas. So
it's like the podcast becomes an audio lobotomy.
It does, really. I'd rather have a podcast in front of me than I'm not sure. So anyway. Let's release these people back into the wild, Ben. And until next time, great talking to you, buddy.
Great talking to you. Be careful out there, Bill. And I'm going to be keeping a closer eye on the ravens and the praying mantises in the meantime. All right. I encourage all of our listeners to do the same.
Yeah, that's right. When you're drinking from the hummingbird feeder, watch out. There might be a mantis there ready to suck your brains. All right. Later, buddy.
Bill.
Bye. Hey, let's take things out with a little Jake La Botz. Can't put a hobo on a passenger train.
I'm a Kodachrome film, been overexposed. The bird and purring round my toes. Can't be controlled, can't be contained. Can't put a hobo on a passenger train.
That's all for this episode, bird people. Never miss a single episode of Out There with the Birds by subscribing to the podcast RSS feed. Go to birdwatchersdigest.com/podcast, scroll down to Out There with the Birds, and click on the link on the right that says subscribe. We'll send you each new episode when it comes out. Special thanks to our sponsors, Koa Sporting Optics, and to the Reader Rendezvous Birding Adventures from Birdwatchers Digest. Until next time, good birding, and we'll see you out there with the birds. Hasta la vista.